The jungle of Sci-Fi Prime was alive in ways humans could not have imagined. Towering trees with thick, twisting vines blocked most of the dim sunlight, leaving the ground in a half-light that shifted as the leaves swayed. Strange sounds echoed from every direction, high-pitched shrieks, deep growls, and the soft rustle of things moving just out of sight. The air was heavy and damp, and the scent of wet soil mixed with something sharp and metallic. For any ordinary visitor, the jungle would have seemed hostile, dangerous, and impossible to navigate. But for the Zorvans it was home. The creatures were perfect hunters, built for the shadows. Their limbs were long and sinewy, muscles coiled like springs beneath tough, scaled skin. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, reflecting even the smallest movements. They had evolved for one purpose: to hunt. Over countless generations they had conquered nearly every species on the planet. Nothing had ever escaped them, nothing had ever tricked them, and nothing had ever challenged their pride. Until today. A faint vibration on the forest floor told the Zorvans that their new prey was near. 3 humans had entered the jungle, moving carefully but with confidence. From the treetops and hidden crevices, the Zorvans observed silently, analyzing every step, every pause. The humans were simple in appearance, small compared to the Zorvans, and unarmed with weapons that could threaten the predators directly. One of them, a man with short brown hair and a determined face, moved steadily ahead, scanning the area with a small device that blinked and beeped as it recorded information. His name was Tom. Beside him, a young woman with dark hair tucked into a ponytail crouched low, examining a patch of strange, glowing moss. Her name was Clara. The third, another young woman with light hair and an easy smile, carefully collected samples in small glass containers. She was Lily. The Zorvans' first thought was simple. Easy prey. Their claws flexed, their teeth bared slightly. This would be like every other hunt. But as they watched, they noticed something strange. The humans moved together as if they shared one mind. When Tom stopped, the others did too. When Lily crouched to collect a sample, Clara instinctively moved to cover the side, scanning the trees. Their eyes were alert, bright with awareness, and every movement seemed deliberate, almost planned. One Zorvan, larger than the rest, crouched in the shadow of a broken tree trunk. Its head tilted slightly as it studied them. They are not ordinary, it hissed to the others. Notice how they pause, notice how they watch. They are aware of us. The other Zorvans flicked their tails nervously but remained silent. Awareness was one thing, cunning was another. They had never seen prey that could think ahead, that could anticipate danger before it came. Usually the creatures they hunted ran blindly, trapped by fear and instinct. But these humans, these strange, fragile beings, seemed calm even in the alien jungle, almost as if the jungle itself were not enough to scare them. Tom moved to a small clearing, stepping carefully over roots that twisted like snakes across the ground. He bent to examine a stone covered in green slime and muttered, "Interesting, these formations might be magnetic. Could explain some of the readings." Clara leaned closer, her eyes scanning the tree line for movement, her hand brushing Lily's arm lightly. "Keep the container steady," she whispered. "We don't want to lose anything. And don't step on the moss, it could react." Lily nodded, smiling faintly. "I've got it. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing." The Zorvans exchanged uneasy looks. These humans were small, fragile, and they should have been easy to snatch and crush. Yet the calmness in their movements, the precision, the silent communication, made the hunters hesitate. They had never needed to pause before a hunt. They had never doubted themselves. But now something felt different. One Zorvan crept closer, moving with soft, careful steps over the leaf-covered ground. It crouched low, aiming to pounce. Its eyes locked on Tom, who was bending over a strange stone. In another second it would strike, and yet something in Tom's posture made the Zorvan hesitate. The human was scanning the area constantly, head turning slightly every few seconds, as if expecting an ambush. The Zorvan froze mid-step, heart pounding. This was not fear, it was calculation. And the creature realized something alarming. The humans could probably see the patterns in their movement. They were not just moving blindly, they were observing, learning, and reacting. Tom looked up suddenly, brushing some leaves from his sleeve, and for a moment, his eyes seemed to sweep the jungle with a subtle awareness that no ordinary human should have. The Zorvan blinked, confused, and the moment passed. But the seed of doubt had been planted. Clara crouched low, whispering to Lily, "I think we're not alone." She moved a little to the side, positioning herself between her friends and the unseen danger. Lily froze, glancing around nervously. But there was no panic in her expression, only focus. The Zorvans watching felt a growing unease. These humans were not prey to be scared or subdued. They were something else entirely, something that adapted, something that planned. The jungle itself, which had been the Zorvan's greatest ally, suddenly seemed full of risks. The shadows were no longer theirs alone. They could be read, anticipated, or used against them. For the first time, the hunters felt the tiniest taste of fear. Tom carefully placed a small sensor on a rock, stepping back to observe the readings. Clara shifted silently to cover him, and Lily moved a few steps forward to collect more moss. Every move was deliberate, measured, and the Zorvans noticed. They realized that if they attacked now they might fail. And failure was something the predators had never known. The largest Zorvan hissed softly, lowering its head. "Wait," it said to the others. "We observe first. We learn. These humans, they are different. They are not ordinary." The others nodded slowly, though tension crept into their limbs. The hunt that had seemed so easy a moment ago now required patience, strategy, and caution. The humans' small size no longer guaranteed their safety, but their intelligence and calm presence made the jungle feel unpredictable, dangerous in ways the Zorvans had never experienced. The humans, meanwhile, continued their work, unaware of the glowing eyes that followed them from the shadows. Tom bent low to pick up another rock, examining its surface closely. Clara whispered, "We should move, keep going along the riverbed. Might find something more interesting there." Lily carefully placed her collected samples into a small satchel. "All right. Let's move," she said. As they advanced, the Zorvans adjusted their positions, moving silently through the trees, careful not to alert the humans. They learned to be patient, to observe and predict. For the first time, the predators faced something they had never faced before. Prey that could think, that could adapt, and that could turn the hunt into a test of intelligence. The jungle, once their domain, now seemed unpredictable. Every rustle of leaves, every shadow cast by the sunlight through the trees, became a puzzle. And at the center of it all were three humans, small, unarmed, seemingly ordinary, but in truth far more dangerous than any predator the Zorvans had ever known. A sudden movement caught Tom's eye. A shadow flickered between the thick trunks of the giant Zypher trees. His heart skipped a beat, though he forced himself to stay calm. He crouched slightly, trying not to make a sound. Clara, beside him, whispered sharply, "Stay alert. Don't move too fast. Watch the undergrowth." Lily paused, holding her small glass containers close to her chest. She tilted her head, listening to the rustle in the distance. "It's close," she said softly, almost to herself. Then it happened. The shadows moved faster than anyone expected. Before the humans could react fully, the Zorvans leapt from their hidden positions. Their limbs were long and powerful, muscles coiling as they launched themselves through the air. Their claws glinted in the pale sunlight that managed to reach the forest floor. Their fangs, sharp as knives, bared in silent threat. But the humans were ready. Lily's hands moved quickly, almost instinctively. She reached into her satchel and pulled out a thin wire she had set up earlier, barely visible against the dark soil. It was simple, a tripline trap, but in the right place it was deadly. One Zorvan's leg caught in the wire mid-leap. It stumbled, letting out a sharp hiss of anger as it crashed into the ground. The other predators slowed for just a fraction of a second, confused by the sudden obstacle. Clara didn't waste a moment. She darted behind a thick tree trunk, her small smoke device in hand. With a flick of her wrist, a cloud of grayish smoke erupted into the clearing, curling around the predators' legs and faces. Their glowing eyes blinked and darted, trying to adjust to the haze, but it was too thick and too sudden. Tom moved forward, his body low, his gaze fixed on the largest Zorvan. He picked up a small branch, not to attack, but to trip the creature if it tried to advance. Every move was deliberate, careful, and coordinated. It was not panic that guided him, it was control. The Zorvans hissed in frustration, the sounds low and guttural. Their ears twitched, nostrils flaring as they tried to catch the scent of their prey. They had hunted countless creatures in the jungles, deserts, and mountains of Zypher Prime, yet nothing had ever moved like this, nothing had ever countered their attacks so quickly. The largest Zorvan, its legs still caught in Lily's trap, shook violently to free itself. Its claws dug into the soil, scattering leaves and dirt, and for a moment it seemed almost unstoppable. But the human stayed calm. Clara shouted softly, "Tom, left side," and he responded immediately, moving to the Zorvan's blind spot. Lily picked up a small rock and threw it to distract a second predator, giving them just enough time to slip past. The Zorvan's frustration grew. They had assumed that humans would run, scream, or freeze in fear. Instead, the humans moved with purpose, almost as if they had expected the attack. Their reactions were too fast, too precise. They were not ordinary prey. One of the smaller Zorvans lunged toward Lily again. She barely had time to react. Her hands grabbed a nearby vine, and she swung herself out of reach, landing lightly on the forest floor. Without hesitation, she rolled and placed another small tripline in the Zorvan's path. The creature stumbled over it, letting out a strangled hiss and backing off, wary now. Tom and Clara had already moved to flank the largest Zorvan, forcing it into a narrow path between two massive trees. Its movements were limited, its powerful body now a disadvantage. Tom dropped a small weighted bag he had tied to a vine, and it swung down with a soft thud onto the Zorvan's back. The predator yelped in shock and spun around, only to find itself caught in another trap, a simple net Clara had prepared in advance. The Zorvan's strategy was failing. Their confidence, once unshakable, began to crumble. They had relied on strength, speed, and instinct, but the humans had used something far more dangerous: foresight. They anticipated the predator's attacks, set simple but effective traps, and moved as a team. Lily glanced at the struggling Zorvan caught in her trap. She could see the gleam of intelligence in its eyes, the sharp awareness that it had underestimated these small, fragile humans. "We're not just running," she whispered to herself. "We're controlling this." Clara's eyes scanned the canopy above, noting branches that could fall and vines that could be pulled. Tom watched the right. "Lily, the left path has another predator." They communicated without panic, in short, clear words that kept them coordinated. The Zorvans could not anticipate every move. Their hunting instincts alone were no longer enough. The largest Zorvan growled, turning to face them fully. Its teeth glinted in the filtered sunlight, claws scraping against the dirt. It lunged, faster than before, but Tom sidestepped, rolling across the ground and landing behind another tree. Clara pulled another smoke device from her belt and activated it. Thick, curling smoke filled the space between them and the predator, causing it to stumble and hiss loudly. Lily moved silently to the side and slipped a simple rope trap around the creature's legs. The Zorvan struggled, but the humans had anticipated its strength. They had used their environment, the trees, vines, and even the uneven ground, to their advantage. For the first time in the history of their species, the Zorvans realized that instinct and strength alone were not enough. There were creatures far smaller, far weaker in body, who could outsmart them, outmaneuver them, and control the battlefield without using claws or fangs. The humans did not attack aggressively. They did not strike to kill. Instead, they neutralized threats, used the jungle itself as a tool, and moved with precision that made the predators hesitate. It was strategy, intelligence, and teamwork that gave them the upper hand. The Zorvans hissed again, this time not with anger alone, but with confusion. One by one, they backed away from the humans, keeping their distance and studying them carefully. They had expected fear and panic. Instead, they found focus, control, and calculation. Tom crouched behind a tree, breathing steadily. "We can keep going," he said, voice calm. Clara nodded, still alert, while Lily carefully reset her trip lines. "We just have to stay smart. Don't give them a chance." The largest Zorvan, finally free of the net, paused and looked at the humans. There was something in its eyes, a flicker of respect, maybe even fear. It had underestimated them. It had thought the humans were simple, weak, easy prey. It had been wrong. The jungle, once a place of perfect control for the Zorvans, had become uncertain. Every leaf, every shadow, every rustle in the underbrush was no longer a guarantee of success. The hunters had learned a lesson that day: intelligence, foresight, and cooperation could overcome raw power. The humans moved on slowly, carefully, never breaking formation, never showing fear. The Zorvans followed at a distance, watching, learning, and wondering how such small, fragile creatures could dominate a fight so effortlessly. By the time the humans reached a small clearing near a stream, the Zorvans had retreated, regrouping in the shadows. Their pride was wounded, their confidence shaken. They had come expecting to hunt, and yet for the first time they had been tested, and found wanting. Tom bent down to examine a strange, luminescent plant near the water. The jungle seemed quieter than usual. The rustling of leaves and the distant calls of strange creatures were still there, but now a new tension hung in the air. The Zorvans had regrouped. Their pride had been wounded in the first encounter, and they were determined to hunt the humans together. They moved in packs this time, coordinating silently with low, guttural sounds. Their glowing eyes scanned every shadow, searching for the humans who had humiliated them once already. Tom, Clara, and Lily were not unaware of the danger. They had spent years training for situations like this, though nothing could truly prepare them for an alien predator. The humans had studied the terrain carefully as they moved, noticing every slope, every hidden pit, every vine that could be used as a tool. Now they decided to use it. The canyon ahead was narrow, its walls rising sharply on either side, thick with twisted roots and hanging vines. Rocks jutted out at strange angles, some loose and ready to fall with the right touch. Pits had been dug in concealed spots, barely covered with leaves. The humans knew the Zorvans would follow them blindly, relying on speed and strength. That was exactly what they planned. Tom paused for a moment, scanning the canyon with his portable scanner. "It's perfect," he whispered. "They won't see the traps until it's too late." Clara nodded, crouching beside him. She pointed to a vine stretched across the canyon floor, almost invisible in the half-light. "That one will trip the first two. The third will fall into the pit near the left wall." Lily checked the final arrangements. "Sunlight reflects off that rock there," she said. "We can use it to distract them. They'll pause for a moment, and that's when we strike." Her hands moved quickly, adjusting the small mirror they had carried in their satchel. Even a small reflection could startle a predator, especially one relying heavily on its senses. The first Zorvan entered the canyon, moving cautiously but with deadly confidence. Its claws scraped lightly against the dirt as it advanced, muscles coiled and ready to spring. The second and third followed, their eyes glowing faintly, scanning for movement. They had learned to be cautious after the first encounter, but they still underestimated the human strategy. Tom raised the mirror slowly. Sunlight hit its surface, reflecting a sharp beam directly into the eyes of the leading Zorvan. The predator hissed and recoiled, momentarily blinded. Its companions paused instinctively, unsure what had caused the sudden flash. Clara and Lily moved silently along the canyon edges, coordinating every step with small hand signals. Every movement was calculated, every position deliberate. The Zorvans' reliance on instinct and brute strength was now a weakness. They were predictable, and the humans had set the stage perfectly. The first Zorvan stumbled over the tripline trap Lily had prepared. Its leg twisted awkwardly, causing it to fall forward with a loud thud. The second Zorvan stepped onto a hidden pit, falling a few feet before catching itself on a hanging vine. Its claws scraped uselessly against the walls, and for a moment, it hung there, confused and frustrated. Tom moved forward, placing a weighted rock near the edge of another pit. With a precise throw, he nudged it, sending the rock clattering down into the shadows. The noise startled the third Zorvan, causing it to slip and almost lose balance. Clara quickly pulled a vine, creating a small swinging obstacle that blocked its path. The hunters had become the hunted. The Zorvans, once confident and aggressive, now hesitated at every step. Their glowing eyes darted around, scanning for invisible threats, while every sound, every movement, made them more cautious. But the humans were always one step ahead. Lily whispered to the others, "Keep calm. Don't let them see panic. Every step they take, they're falling into our plan." Tom nodded. He could see the larger strategy unfolding. They weren't just surviving, they were controlling the battle entirely. The first Zorvan finally freed itself from the tripline, but it was now wary. Its movements were slower, more careful, as if it understood for the first time that these humans were dangerous in ways it could not fully comprehend. The second Zorvan, still dangling from the vine, hissed and pulled itself back onto solid ground, shaking off the dirt and leaves. But even it moved with hesitation. Clara signaled to Tom. He lifted the mirror again, catching a shaft of sunlight that reflected directly into the eyes of the largest Zorvan at the back. The predator froze, claws gripping the rocky ground, as the bright light forced it to turn its head. That was all the humans needed. Lily released a small smoke device into the canyon. The thick gray smoke spread quickly, curling along the walls and obscuring the humans' movement. The Zorvans hissed loudly, thrashing and snapping, trying to adjust to the sudden confusion. In that moment, Tom, Clara, and Lily moved with silent precision, repositioning themselves behind rocks and vines, always staying just out of reach. The canyon was no longer a simple path, it had become a trap-filled maze. Every pit, every tripline, every swinging vine was a calculated obstacle, designed to confuse, slow, and frustrate the Zorvans. And the humans navigated it like it was a simple forest trail, calm and unafraid. The largest Zorvan lunged blindly through the smoke, trying to attack, but it tripped over a hidden vine Lily had set across the path. It fell heavily onto the rocky ground, growling in frustration. Its companions struggled against the pits and traps, each one now unsure of the safest path forward. Tom glanced at Clara. "They're slowing down. Keep moving." Clara nodded, her eyes sharp, scanning for the next obstacle to trigger. Lily adjusted another rope, ready to trip the third Zorvan if it tried to flank them. It was clear now, the humans were not just surviving, they were controlling the battlefield. The Zorvan's natural advantages, strength, speed, sharp senses, were no longer enough. The humans' intelligence, preparation and coordination had turned the hunt upside down. One by one the Zorvans began to retreat, at least slightly, wary of every step. The humans could see it in their movements, the hesitation, the careful pacing, the constant scanning. The predators were no longer the hunters, they were the hunted. Tom took a deep breath and whispered, "Keep focused. We can guide them all the way through the canyon. They won't touch us if we stay smart." Clara nodded, signaling Lily, and the three moved forward, careful not to trigger unnecessary traps themselves, guiding the predators deeper into the canyon where the environment favored them. The Zorvans hissed and growled in frustration. They had come to hunt, expecting an easy prey, but now they were trapped in a maze of human strategy. Every instinct they had, every skill honed over countless hunts, was being turned against them. The realization hit them: humans were not simple creatures. They were clever, adaptable, and unpredictable. The canyon echoed with the sounds of hissing, rustling, and snapping vines as the humans continued their slow, careful advance. Tom reflected sunlight into the eyes of any predator that dared approach too closely. Clara and Lily repositioned trip lines, adjusted nets, and used the terrain to their advantage. It was a dance of strategy and survival, and the humans were leading. For the first time the Zorvans felt fear, not the fear of being killed quickly but the fear of being outsmarted. They had been predators all their lives, but these humans had shown them something new. Intelligence could outweigh raw strength. Patience, planning, and teamwork could turn even the strongest hunters into prey. The humans moved steadily, keeping together, guiding the predators deeper into the traps they had prepared. The canyon, once just a path through the jungle, had become a carefully designed challenge, and the humans were masters of it. By the time the Zorvans realized they had been completely outmaneuvered, they were exhausted, frustrated, and wary. The humans, small and fragile, had forced them to move cautiously, hesitate at every step, and second-guess their instincts. The balance of power had shifted, and the lesson was clear. Raw strength alone was not enough to survive in the presence of a clever, coordinated enemy. Tom paused, looking back at the predators struggling in the canyon. "We did it," he said softly. "We're not just surviving, we're controlling this. Every step they take we control." Clara and Lily nodded, keeping their eyes on the Zorvans, ready for any sudden move. The predators, once confident and proud, were now wary. The humans had turned the hunt upside down. The hunters had become the hunted, and the lesson had been learned in full. Humans were dangerous not because of their strength but because of their mind. The canyon fell silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the Zorvans' low, frustrated growls. The humans moved forward, calm and focused, fully aware that they had changed the rules of the hunt. The air in the canyon was thick with dust, smoke, and the sharp scent of crushed leaves. The Zorvans, frustrated and exhausted, had scattered, trying to find a safe way out of the traps the humans had laid. One of them, the largest and most powerful, had misjudged a pit and fallen hard into a concealed net. Its massive limbs thrashed, trying to escape, but every move only tightened the ropes that held it. The creature's glowing eyes darted around wildly, searching for the humans who had outsmarted it. Clara moved carefully toward the trapped predator. Her steps were quiet but deliberate, careful not to provoke unnecessary panic. She could feel the tension in the canyon. The other Zorvans lingered nearby, watching, curious and wary. But this one was hers to deal with. "We don't kill unless we must," Clara said softly, almost as if speaking to herself. She knelt down a few feet from the struggling creature. "We survive by thinking, not just by strength." Tom and Lily stayed back, watching the other predators from behind the rocks. They had trained for moments like this, where confrontation could be deadly if mishandled. Yet Clara moved confidently, her eyes fixed on the Zorvan, showing neither fear nor hesitation. The Zorvan hissed, a low, guttural sound that echoed through the canyon. It thrashed, trying to break free, but the net and its own miscalculations held it tight. Its mind, sharp and tuned for hunting, could not grasp what the humans were doing. Every trap, every maneuver, every small distraction had been deliberate. The humans had not acted on instinct. They had thought, planned, and adapted at every turn. Clara extended a hand slowly, her fingers open, showing no intention of violence. The Zorvan's eyes flicked to her hand, narrowing with suspicion. It had never seen such behavior in prey. Usually creatures ran, cried, or attacked blindly. But this human approached calmly, carefully, as if it understood something deeper about the predator. Tom whispered to Lily from behind the rocks, "Watch the other Zorvans. If they try anything, we need to be ready." Lily nodded, her hands tightening around a small staff. But she knew the main threat was not from aggression. This was a test of intellect, not strength. Clara spoke again, her voice low but firm. "You are strong, yes. But strength alone will not survive here. Thinking, planning, and cooperation matter more than brute force." The Zorvan stopped thrashing for a moment, its head tilting slightly, trying to understand her words. Its instincts screamed at it to attack, to lash out, to escape immediately. But something in the human's calmness made it hesitate. For the first time, it felt uncertain, and uncertainty was dangerous for a predator like it. Tom moved closer to the edge of the rocks, holding the small mirror they had used before. "We've set the traps for safety, not to harm unnecessarily," he said quietly, echoing Clara's words. "We control, but we don't destroy." The Zorvan's eyes flicked between the humans, trying to calculate the next move. Its mind, trained to dominate every hunt, could not easily adapt to this. Every step the humans took was deliberate, coordinated, and unexpected. Every trap had a purpose. Every distraction was planned. It was thinking on a level the Zorvan had never experienced. Lily stepped forward slightly, adjusting a rope trap to make sure the net held securely. She spoke softly to the creature, almost soothingly. "We don't want to hurt you more than necessary. You will be free soon if you learn from this." The Zorvan's glowing eyes widened. The idea that it could learn from humans, that humans could control the situation without fear, was alien to it. Clara crouched lower, closer to the Zorvan, her eyes meeting its glowing gaze. "You survive by understanding," she said. "Not by running, not by attacking blindly. You think or you fail. That is how we survive." The Zorvan's massive head tilted, and for a brief moment, it seemed to understand. Its powerful body, once confident and deadly, was now trapped not by human strength, but by their intelligence. Every action the humans had taken had been precise, adaptable, and deliberate. It had misjudged, assumed, and failed to anticipate the human strategy. Tom stepped closer, holding a small scanner that could read the predator's vital signs. "We could hurt it," he said quietly. "We have the chance. But we won't. That's not the way we survive. That's not the way humans think." The Zorvan thrashed again, but its movements were slower, cautious. Every step it took now considered the human's possible actions. Its mind, built to dominate, was now forced to observe, to calculate, to learn. Lily knelt on the opposite side of the net, speaking in low tones. "We can teach each other without bloodshed. That is what makes us different." The Zorvan's glowing eyes flicked between the three humans, confused and intrigued. For the first time, it faced prey that was not prey in the usual sense. These humans were not driven by fear or instinct, they were driven by thought. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a small device, one that emitted harmless pulses of light and sound. She held it near the Zorvan, allowing it to see that the humans had more tools than brute strength. "See this?" she said softly. "Everything we do has a reason. Everything we do is planned. We survive not because we are strong but because we think, adapt, and work together." The Zorvan stopped thrashing altogether, staring at the device, then at the humans. Its body was powerful, its instincts sharp, but its mind could not fully comprehend the level of foresight the humans displayed. It had learned to hunt, yes, but never to anticipate thought itself. Tom knelt beside Clara. "You see that?" he said quietly. "It's trying to understand. That's the first step. Once it understands, it won't underestimate us again." The other Zorvans watched from the canyon edges, hidden in shadows. They had seen the humans' precision, their calmness, their intelligence. Their pride was wounded, but their curiosity was growing. Even the largest predator, trapped and struggling, seemed to hesitate as it considered the humans' approach. Clara leaned closer to the Zorvan, keeping her tone soft. "We don't fight unless we must. We survive with our minds. Every trap, every move, every decision is a lesson in thinking." The Zorvan's eyes narrowed, glowing faintly, trying to reconcile its instincts with the human's calm control. Lily adjusted the ropes slightly, careful not to cause harm. "We don't need to destroy you," she said. "We just need to make sure you understand." Her voice was steady, confident, and even the Zorvan could sense the authority behind it. The trapped predator's massive body quivered, but the thrashing slowed. It realized that the humans were not acting out of fear or malice. They were acting with intelligence, control, and purpose. It had never faced prey like this, creatures that could survive without relying on raw strength. Tom stood slightly, giving a clear signal to the other humans. "We teach through actions, not violence. We survive because we plan, because we think, and because we work together. That is what makes humans dangerous. The Zorvan blinked slowly, its mind processing these words in ways it had never known. It had been trained to dominate, to hunt, to strike first and fear nothing. But now it faced humans who could anticipate, manipulate, and survive through strategy alone. Clara crouched one final time, meeting the Zorvan's gaze. "Learn this," she said softly. "Survival is not about strength. It's about intelligence, adaptation, and cooperation. That is why we live, and that is why you must respect us." The Zorvan, still trapped but no longer struggling violently, seemed to pause, its glowing eyes softening slightly. It understood, even if only partially, that the humans were not ordinary prey. Every step they took, every device they used, every coordinated movement had shown a level of intelligence it had never seen. For the humans, this was a small victory, not in blood but in understanding. They had proven that survival was not about strength or instinct alone. They had turned a predator into a student, showing that the mind could dominate even the strongest body. The canyon was silent, save for the soft rustle of leaves and the low hum of distant creatures. Tom, Clara, and Lily stepped back slightly, giving the Zorvan space to process. The other predators watched quietly, no longer moving aggressively. They had seen the lesson, and it was clear: humans were dangerous in ways that brute strength could not match. The largest Zorvan, immobilized but alive, blinked slowly, and for the first time, it felt something new: respect, cautious and wary. The humans were not just survivors, they were masters of thought, coordination, and strategy. And in that quiet canyon, the first true understanding between predator and human began to form. The sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks and twisted vines of Zephyr Prime's jungle. The canyon had become a maze, a trap-filled labyrinth where every movement could be a danger or an advantage. The Zorvans were still nearby, scattered through the underbrush, growling quietly as they tried to regain control. Their pride had been wounded, their patience tested, and now their hunger for revenge pushed them forward. But the humans were ready. Tom led the way, his movements slow, careful, and deliberate. Every step he took was measured. Every rock he touched, every branch he shifted, was done to prepare for what was coming. Clara and Lily followed closely, communicating silently with hand signals and subtle gestures. They had learned the Zorvan's hunting patterns from the previous encounters, and they knew how to use it against them. A shadow flickered to the right, and a Zorvan crouched low, its eyes glowing faintly as it tracked the human's movement. Another moved along the canyon edge, muscles coiled, ready to spring. They thought they had regained the advantage, but the humans were no longer ordinary prey, they were predators of thought, strategy, and planning. Tom glanced at Clara and Lily. "Time to guide them," he whispered. Clara nodded, adjusting a rope trap across a narrow path ahead. Lily carefully rolled a small weighted net into position, hiding it behind a pile of leaves. The humans didn't just survive, they controlled the battlefield. The first Zorvan lunged, snapping its claws at the empty space where the humans had just been. Its momentum carried it forward, and it stumbled into a cleverly camouflaged pit that Tom had prepared earlier. The creature fell a few feet, thrashing violently, only to find its movement slowed by vines stretched across the pit's bottom. Its frustration hissed through the air, and its companions froze, uncertain of the terrain. Clara moved quickly to the side, kicking small rocks into a pile to create false sounds. The Zorvan's instincts forced them to investigate, but each time they approached they found nothing, only shadows, echoes, and traps. Every false trail led them deeper into the humans' carefully prepared path, and each misstep drained their energy and confidence. Lily signaled with a small hand gesture, and Tom understood immediately. He picked up a mirror and reflected a streak of sunlight across the canyon wall. The moving light flickered like fire, catching the eyes of the largest Zorvan. It paused, blinking, trying to understand the sudden flash. That hesitation was enough. Clara pulled a rope, and a small net fell from above, entangling the predator's front limbs. It struggled, growling low, but the humans were already moving out of sight, having anticipated every reaction. The Zorvans hissed in frustration. They had expected prey to run in panic, not to manipulate them, not to lead them into traps designed by intelligence rather than strength. Their instincts, honed over generations, were now a disadvantage. Every move they made was anticipated, every attack countered, every step into the canyon a calculated risk they could not control. Tom, Clara, and Lily moved silently through the shadows, careful to stay just out of sight. They avoided unnecessary confrontation, guiding the Zorvans into false paths and traps. They did not strike to kill, they did not need to. Every step of the humans was deliberate, every movement teaching the predators a lesson in caution and respect. One of the smaller Zorvans tried to flank them, moving through the underbrush to cut them off. Lily anticipated it, pulling a rope that toppled a pile of rocks, blocking the creature's path. It hissed, trying to climb over, only to fall into a hidden pit lined with vines. It struggled for a moment, exhausted and confused, then finally backed away, wary of the human's cunning. Clara crouched low, signaling to Tom and Lily to slow down. The Zorvans were still moving, but fatigue had set in. Their energy was waning, their confidence was gone. They were still dangerous, still powerful, but now they hesitated at every shadow, every noise, every movement. The humans, in contrast, were calm, patient, and in control. Tom glanced around the canyon. "We don't need to rush them," he said quietly. "They'll make mistakes if we stay smart. Let them tire themselves out." Clara nodded, her eyes scanning the terrain for the next trap to trigger. Lily adjusted a weighted net, careful not to reveal its position too soon. The largest Zorvan, now caught partially in a vine trap, hissed and thrashed, but its movements were slower, weaker. Its companions were retreating slightly, exhausted from the repeated missteps, the false trails, and the traps that had been set in their path. They had been confident predators once, ready to take down any prey, but now they were wary, frustrated, and overmatched by creatures far smaller than themselves. The humans had not struck a single lethal blow. They had relied entirely on strategy, planning, and intelligence. Every trap had been non-lethal, every distraction calculated, every movement coordinated. They were not cruel, they were careful, deliberate, and effective. The Zorvans had learned the hard way that survival did not rely solely on strength, it relied on thought. Lily paused for a moment, breathing steadily. "Look at them," she whispered to Clara. "They're hesitant now. They're learning." Clara nodded, understanding exactly what Lily meant. The predators had realized, too late, that humans could think several steps ahead, predicting reactions, preparing for contingencies, and using the environment as an ally. Tom raised the mirror again, catching a sliver of sunlight and reflecting it into the eyes of the largest Zorvan. The creature blinked and stumbled back, and in that moment, all three humans slipped to higher ground, out of immediate danger but still controlling the canyon floor. The Zorvans hissed and growled, but their confidence had shattered. Exhaustion and frustration slowed their movements, and one by one they began to retreat, moving back toward the jungle beyond the canyon. Each step was careful, measured, cautious, and uncertain. The humans had won without violence. They had shown mastery but not cruelty. Clara crouched beside Tom and whispered, "They won't come near us for a while. They've learned." Tom nodded, glancing at the retreating predators. "They have. And they'll remember this lesson." Lily smiled faintly, adjusting the small devices they had used to reflect light and create sound diversions. "We didn't need to hurt them. We just needed to outthink them. That's how humans survive." The Zorvans disappeared into the jungle shadows, exhausted and wary. They had been strong, fast, and deadly, but none of that mattered against humans who could think ahead, anticipate danger, and use intelligence and teamwork to survive. Tom, Clara, and Lily moved carefully out of the canyon, still alert but confident. Every step they took reinforced the lesson they had just taught. Strength alone was not enough. Survival came from strategy, observation, and cooperation. The predators had learned that today and they would never forget it. The sun dipped lower, casting long, flickering shadows over the canyon. The humans paused briefly, taking in the quiet. No one spoke, but the feeling was clear. They had not just survived, they had shown mastery over creatures far stronger than themselves, not through violence but through thought. Tom turned to Clara and Lily. "We did it," he said quietly. "We didn't just survive, we controlled the outcome." Clara smiled, nodding. "They'll think twice before hunting humans again." Lily adjusted her satchel, gathering their tools. "And we didn't hurt anyone. That's the point. That's how we win." The canyon was silent now, except for the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of other creatures. The Zorvans had retreated, humbled and exhausted. The humans walked forward, calm, confident, and united. Their survival had never depended on brute strength, it had depended on intelligence, cooperation, and careful planning. The jungle had tested them, but humans had emerged victorious, not through violence or force but through the power of thought. And as they moved away from the canyon, they knew one thing clearly. The predators had learned the hard way that humans were not prey, they were a force to be reckoned with, clever, coordinated, and unstoppable. The jungle was quiet now. The sun had slipped low behind the dense canopy of Zephyr Prime, casting long shadows over the twisted trees and tangled vines. The sounds of the jungle, the shrieks of strange creatures, the rustle of leaves, the low hum of insects, seemed muted, almost respectful, as if the forest itself had paused to watch what was happening. From the shadows the Zorvans observed the humans. Their glowing eyes flickered with curiosity, caution, and something unfamiliar, humility. The largest predator, still nursing minor scrapes from the traps and falls, crouched low behind a massive root, watching Tom, Clara, and Lily move through the undergrowth. Its companions remained hidden, cautious and silent, giving the humans space they had never given any creature before. For the first time, the Zorvans realized that their pride was not the measure of strength. They had hunted countless species, dominated their territories and feared no creature. But humans were different. They moved with intelligence, coordination, and purpose. They had survived not by force but by strategy. They had turned the hunt upside down, using the jungle itself as a tool, outsmarting predators built for centuries to dominate all who crossed their path. Tom led the way through a narrow path lined with thick vines and fallen branches. He moved deliberately, keeping his steps quiet but confident. Clara and Lily followed closely, carrying their equipment and research samples with careful hands. They had learned much during their time on Zephyr Prime, the alien plants, the strange magnetic minerals, and the behavior of the Zorvans themselves. But beyond the data and observations they had learned another lesson. Patience, intelligence, and cooperation could overcome even the most deadly threats. As they walked, Tom glanced back at the shadows where the Zorvans lingered. The predators had not attempted to follow closely. They had stopped, watching, analyzing, perhaps even learning. Some hunters are smarter than others, he said, a grin spreading across his face. Clara laughed softly, the sound light and confident in the quiet jungle. And some hunters know when to respect their prey, she added. Lily adjusted the straps of her satchel, still keeping an eye on the shadows. They're learning, she said quietly. They'll remember this encounter for a long time. They'll remember that humans aren't easy prey. The largest Zorvan shifted slightly, testing the air with its nostrils. It had been trained to dominate, to strike first and strike hard. But the humans had shown it another way to survive, without aggression, without recklessness, and without needless violence. They had used the environment, their minds, and teamwork to control the outcome. That was something the Zorvans had never experienced, and it left them both frustrated and awed. The humans paused briefly at the edge of a small cliff overlooking a cascading river. The sunlight reflected off the water in brilliant streaks, lighting up the canyon walls and revealing the maze of traps, nets, and trip lines the humans had used. Tom looked down, noticing the faint shapes of the Zorvans still hidden in the shadows, observing without daring to move closer. They won't try to attack again today, Tom said, his voice calm. They've learned the hard way that intelligence beats instinct when it's used well. Clara nodded, kneeling to examine a small glowing plant near the cliff edge, taking notes in her portable device. And they'll probably teach their young about this, she added. They'll tell them about humans who can think, plan, and survive against predators far stronger than themselves. Lily looked over the edge of the cliff, her eyes scanning the jungle below. The Zorvans were retreating slowly, their glowing eyes still watching, but now with caution instead of aggression. They're still proud, she said softly. But they understand respect now. Tom smiled. Respect is the key, he said. It's not about fear. It's about knowing when to act, when to wait, and when to learn. That's why humans survive, why we adapt, and why we keep going. Clara and Lily both nodded in agreement. The Zorvans had begun to move deeper into the jungle, disappearing between the twisted roots and dense foliage. Their movements were careful, measured, and silent. They had been tested and humbled, and though they were predators, they had learned something new about the humans they had tried to hunt. Humans were clever, adaptable, fearless, but most importantly they were strategic. As the trio of humans continued their walk through the forest, the canyon behind them seemed to breathe again. The traps, the trip lines, the nets, all designed for survival rather than harm, lay still, reminders of the cleverness and patience of the small humans who had survived against all odds. Tom glanced at Clara and Lily. We didn't need to fight them to prove a point, he said quietly. We didn't need to hurt them to survive. That's what makes humans different. That's what makes us strong. Clara smiled. And we showed them that strength isn't just muscles and claws. It's brains, teamwork, and thinking ahead. Lily nodded. We survived, yes. But we did it with respect and they've learned from it. In the shadows, the Zorvans paused occasionally, watching the humans as they moved farther into the forest. They would not forget this day. They would remember how small, fragile creatures had turned the hunt upside down, had used cunning and strategy to outmaneuver predators built to dominate. The lesson was clear and permanent. Humans were dangerous not because of raw strength, but because of intelligence, coordination, and adaptability. The jungle itself seemed to acknowledge this unspoken lesson. Birds called softly in the distance, leaves rustled in the gentle evening breeze, and the low hum of alien insects filled the air. Even the forest seemed to recognize that something extraordinary had occurred. Humans had survived in a place designed for the predators, not just surviving but excelling through thought, planning, and cooperation. Tom stopped for a moment, watching the river below, the sunlight glinting off its surface. "We've learned a lot here," he said softly. "And I think they have too." Clara and Lily looked at him, understanding the meaning behind his words. The Zorvans would never underestimate humans again. They moved on slowly, carrying only what they needed: research samples, observations, and lessons learned from the jungle and the predators who had tried to hunt them. There was no triumph in force, no victory in bloodshed. Their triumph came from survival, strategy, and intelligence. As the humans disappeared into the thicker parts of the forest, the Zorvans finally turned away, their pride still intact but tempered by respect. They would remember the humans, the small, clever creatures who had survived every trap, anticipated every move, and demonstrated that survival was more than power. It was thought, teamwork, and adaptation. Tom glanced back once more. "Some hunters are smarter than others," he said again, grinning, this time with a mixture of satisfaction and amusement. Clara smiled, adjusting her satchel. "And sometimes the smartest hunters don't need claws or teeth to survive. They just need their brains." Lily laughed softly. "And patience," she added. "Lots of patience." The sun dipped fully behind the canopy, leaving the jungle in soft twilight. Shadows stretched across the canyon floor, the traps and nets blending into the natural scenery. The humans continued onward, leaving the Zorvans in the jungle they had once ruled without question. The predators had learned that day that strength and instincts alone were not enough to dominate all creatures. Humans had proven something far more important. Survival depended on intelligence, coordination, and courage. For the Zorvans, the encounter was humbling, unforgettable, and perhaps even transformative. They would return to their territory, their hunting grounds, and their young with stories of the small, unassuming creatures who had survived against impossible odds. They would speak of the humans' clever traps, their coordinated movements, and the patience and intelligence that had allowed them to guide predators through a maze of danger without ever striking a lethal blow. And for the humans, the journey had ended with no casualties, no unnecessary harm, and with the quiet satisfaction of a mission completed. They had survived, they had learned, and they had proven to themselves, and to the universe, that humans were predators in their own right. They were fearless, clever, and unstoppable, not because of sheer force, but because of their minds, their cooperation, and their ability to adapt to any challenge. The jungle was quiet now, but the lesson lingered. In the shadows, the Zorvans watched, humbled, cautious, and in awe. In the light of the fading sun, the humans disappeared from view, leaving behind only footprints, careful traps, and a story that would be told for generations in both human and alien histories. The day had ended, but the memory of it would never fade. Humans had turned the hunt upside down, not through violence but through thought, patience, and respect. And in doing so, they had earned something no predator could take away: recognition as a true force in the universe.